The History of the Philippine Legal System by Group 1, JD1B. The Philippines has one of the most strategic locations in the Southeast Asian region, so much so that it has become a major gateway to the 620 million strong market of ASEAN. Its location also has an ideal proximity to some of the world's major economies, namely China, South Korea, Australia, and China. This unique vantage point, however, is not only recognized in contemporary history. Historians and ethnographers have done numerous researches and have uncovered evidence that the Philippines has been a major trading route and destination for various ancient cultures in Southeast Asia. Evidence of this can be found in the annals of Chinese history, with the Philippines being referred to as Mai, which translates to mine of gold, which is believed to be the origin of the name Mindoro. Then came the age of Western colonization, with Spain claiming Islas Filipinas in 1521, the Americans in 1898 via the Treaty of Paris, and Japan from 1942 to 1945. The Americans would grant sovereignty to the Philippines in 1945. It is not surprising that these countries would leave a mark not only in history and culture, but in our legal system as well. Historians date the pre-colonial period prior to the arrival of Ferdinand Magellan on the island of Mactan in the province of Cebu in the year 1521. Contrary to early assertions of Orientalist scholars, the Philippines had a robust and sophisticated culture long before the arrival of Spain. One of the significant developments of this period is the establishment of city-states called barangay. A barangay was an independent and self-sustaining political unit. Each barangay was headed by a datu, and a collective of barangays pledges its loyalty to Araha. The datu promulgates laws in the barangay in consultation with elders of the community. Laws were mostly unwritten and passed orally to succeeding generations. The full powers of government rests with the datu. Crimes committed by a member of the community is usually tried in a court convened by the datu with the assistance of the village elders. Cases are usually settled first by meeting of the parties or a mediation. If parties cannot come to an amicable settlement, a public trial is usually held. Parties took oaths that bind them to accept and submit to the decision of the court. This is quite similar to how barangay settled disputes today, as embodied in the Katarungang Pambarangay Law. Under said law, parties in dispute must first submit to a mediation facilitated by a punong barangay and assisted by his barangay council. Only after this mediation can parties file petitions in court. Spain ruled the Philippines from the Viceroyalty of Mexico for almost 400 years. It is not surprising that our current legal system borrows heavily from the Spanish period. Some of these are the Spanish Civil Code of 1899, the Mortgage Law of 1861, and the Notarial Law of 1862. One of the most important developments in Philippine justice system during this period is the establishment of the Royal Audiencia in 1853. This government body contains some of the elements of the modern-day Supreme Court. The Audiencia acts as an advisory body to the Spanish Governor-General in the Philippines. It also serves as a system of check and balance by sending financial and administrative reports to the Royal Court of Spain. The American occupation of the Philippines officially started when Spain ceded the Philippines to the United States of America via the Treaty of Paris in 1898 for the sum of $20 million. The American period would make a lasting impact not only on the judicial system but also in the legal education of the Philippines. On June 11, 1901, the Supreme Court of the Philippines would come into existence through Act No. 136, officially known as an act providing for the organization of the courts in the Philippine Islands. The court at the time was composed of the Chief Justice and 5 other judges. The Supreme Court instituted a hybrid of the American and Spanish systems. This method would allow for the shift to contemporary jurisprudence we are familiar with today. The UP College of Law was established through the efforts of Justice George Arthur Malcolm. It is the first institution of higher learning for the study of law that conducted classes in English. Its curriculum would also serve as the basis of curricula for contemporary Philippine law schools today. The invasion of the Japanese imperial forces would bring mass destruction to the Philippines. Manila was declared an open city in 1941. Despite this, however, the Japanese would reduce and bomb Manila to rubble. The Japanese government would install the de facto Laurel government, and the de jure Commonwealth government would rule out of Washington, D.C. The Executive Commission, a Japanese-sponsored body, would ratify the short-lived 1943 Constitution. The martial law period would be a time of great upheaval in Philippine history. In 1972, President Ferdinand Marcos would issue Proclamation 1081, placing the entire Philippines under martial law. Also known as the ratification cases, this case is one of the most controversial and divisive issues not only in the history of the Supreme Court but also of Philippine jurisprudence. The case deals with the controversial ratification of the 1973 Constitution. The time after the EDSA revolution up to present is also replete with issues concerning the Philippine judicial system. Among these are the promulgation of the 1987 Constitution, the ousting of President Joseph Estrada in 2001, the impeachment and removal of CJ Renato Corona, and the co-warranto cases and the removal of CJ Maria Lourdes Sereno. Please take note of the references we used for this presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. We shall now proceed with the next group for the Philippine legal system.